we go. And I can steer with my rudder. Steer with my rudder. Give it a little bit more speed. Let's see how fast we're going. We're going 3.2 right now. Let's see. Turn it up a little bit. 3.5. Oh, my net. No. Oh, my pedal's not even. All right. We're going 4. Not even full speed yet. We're going 4. There we go. 4.3. 4.4. Look at that speed. 4.5. Not even full speed yet. 4.6. Probably won't get over 5. 4.7. Not even full throttle yet. There goes some more. Let's see. We give it some more juice. 4.7. 4.8. 4.9. Let's hit that 5. There goes 5. 5.03. I can give it some more juice. There we go. 5.11. Alright, there we go. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the channel, people. So I've been getting a lot of questions about my trolling motor setup for my Hobie Outback, and so I just wanted to cover that for everyone so you guys can see what I'm running with. Before I get into the setup though, I did want to review the hardware. So I'm using a 65-pound brushless Haswing trolling motor with a stepless controller, which is basically a potentiometer. Also using a Brushless aluminum motor mount, which mounts in the footprint location of a normal power pole motor mount or power pole setup. And last but not least, I'm using a 60 amp hour amped outdoors lithium iron phosphate battery. So that's my setup as far as what I'm using for the trolling motor. I'll go ahead and show you the hardware and how I have it set up. First and foremost, I have the 60 amp hour lithium battery here in the front with a 8-gauge power wire that I'm using. That's running through my hole, coming up through the scupper hole for the transducer, and it's coming up here, and I actually have it all shoe-gooed up because I like to keep it shoe-gooed because this acts as a scupper and I don't want any extra water getting into my hole. But then that runs through, comes out, and it runs to a hobby box. In this hobby box, I actually mounted a kill switch. Man, I think the kill switch is in the house. I gotta go get it. But basically the kill switch plugs in here. The other end has a kind of like a bungee cord, just like your boat kill switch. And I just hooked that to my life jacket. And then it connects to a trolling motor connector that you could get at Bass Pro Shops or Academy. You take your choice. Coming back over here, I do have the cleat here, which is how I lower and raise the trolling motor. Basically, I pull forward and disconnect and let the trolling motor down using this handle. And then when I want to bring it up, I just pull the handle and then stuff it in this cleat, and it does not move. I have that paracord going through some eyelets that I have installed here on my secondary rail that I added. As you know, these Hobies come with the bungee here. I took the bungee off, put a secondary rail on both sides, and then this goes to the actual trolling motor. And I'll show you that here in a second. But this is my mount. This is the actual Brushless aluminum mount I'm referring to. The one thing I'll say about this mount is that for me at least, the holes did not line up perfectly with the power pole location holes, and I had to waddle the holes out. I did contact the vendor and they said that it should be correct because of the measurements they have, but for me it wasn't. Maybe I just got a bad one, but you know, drilling them bigger didn't hurt or anything. Everything works just fine. So if you have to drill them bigger, there is no problem with that. And I do have the actual mount that came with the trolling motor, the Haswing trolling motor. I have it mounted here permanently. The reason why is because I have a cotter pin and a hitch pin that I use to quick disconnect the trolling motor, and so that's there. Just to give you a better look at the actual mount, this is the actual mount. It's very solid. The only thing is there is a little space here which allows it to flex a little bit, which is fine. I may put a spacer here to take up the rest of that space, but there's no issues with that at all. So I'll go ahead and mount this back here. Typically I never even remove this portion of my trolling motor. I just leave it here permanently because there is no reason to remove it with the quick disconnect hitch pin and cotter pin. But also what I did, just so you can know, is I put a spacer here. This is made out of cutting board, and the reason why is I don't have reverse on this trolling motor. I don't use reverse for the trolling motor, and nor do I use the steering. I use steering from the aluminum rudder that you see right here, and I only use forward. If I need to go in reverse, I use my pedals. And reason being is going forward allows me to not have to lock the trolling motor in place, which allows it to kick up freely. And I have this spacer here to keep my optimum angle that I want for better performance. It's about, I'll say 95 degrees instead of 90, because when you sit in your kayak you kind of lean back a little bit as you go through the water. So I'll say it's about 95 degrees if you want to put a number on it. But that's how I have mine set up. I don't use the lock in place mechanism that comes with the trolling motor. I took it off, it just unbolts, and I'll show you that here shortly. So here is the trolling motor. This is the Haswing. It does not have the head unit on. It's been removed. It's in pieces right there, which I'll go through in a second. And as you can see, I have another trolling motor here. This is a Newport 46 pound. This is a Haswing Brushless 65 pound. Notice the difference in size of the units. Like, this thing is almost double the size, and it weighs much more than this trolling motor. And as you can see, like I said, this is how the trolling motor, oh my god, this is how it normally comes, with a C-clip. And you can remove that C-clip, and then you have this adjustment here which allows you to adjust to each spot and lock in place. I removed that from my trolling motor, or at least from the brushless one. And what I did also is I created this harness from the actual connectors that came out of the head. So this is the 12-volt power harness that plugs into the port on my kayak, and this is the 2-wire harness that I made, which provides 12-volt power to the digital gauge on my controller. And this is the 5-wire harness that provides all the signaling for the potentiometer, as well as the signaling for, there's a piezo buzzer that comes with the head of the trolling motor, and I have that mounted in my box as well because it gives you audible signals for troubleshooting. So I do keep that mounted. And so a total of 7 extra wires on these connectors, but I only use 6. 2 for power, 4 for the other things I mentioned. And so what this allows me to do is just come to my kayak, very light to pick up, less than my power pole, and all I need to do is just come like this, drop it in place. Actually, let me move this cord. There we go. Drop it in place, get this, and boom, we're in. Put the cotter pin in. I'll do it for right now, and that's it. And so then take my harness and come to this side of the kayak, take my harness, come around here, plug it into the port, the 12-volt power, right, and then I plug in these connections to my connectors, which these run through my kayak on the other end, along with the power wire. There we go. And give me a second and I'm going to go ahead and get the actual kill switch plug. Got my life jacket here just to show you what I do is I kind of hook this guy to the life jacket, and I'll just have this plugged in while I'm sitting in my seat. And you heard the piezo kind of go off. This is my controller box that I created. The wires from the harness run through the kayak, up through the Hobie plug, and to this controller box that I created. It's just a little waterproof hobby box, and then inside I have the 12-volt gauge, a potentiometer, aftermarket potentiometer, and I'll show you why in a bit, and also the piezo that came in the head unit of the trolling motor, and it's mounted here. It's pretty solid, it doesn't move, and this is where I keep it. It's a waterproof box, so it works pretty well. The key thing about this trolling motor is that you have to mark the off position of where the trolling motor is supposed to be before you give it 12-volt power. And the reason being is I think it's because it's a potentiometer and that's the way it is, and there's no on and off switch. And so for me, I know the arrow needs to point to the V, but you know, you may just want to clock yours just to know. It's basically 40% reverse, 60% forward. And I don't use reverse, like I said, because I use my Hobie Mirage drive for reverse. I only use forward, and I use my rudder to turn. I don't use the kayak or the trolling motor to turn. But it's already powered on, it has my volts there, and so I'll go ahead and go forward with it. You can hear it in the back. Go ahead and show it down here. Can lift it up for you guys. Alright. Go back to the off position. Go reverse. Same thing in reverse. So everything works fine. Now, this is an aftermarket potentiometer that I have inside, and one of the caveats to it is I think the range is a little further than the regular one or the stock one, and so you have to know your limits or it'll automatically stop by itself. And I'll show you an example. So I'm going to go forward full blast, and I'm going to go to the point where it's going to turn off by itself right there. See, and you can hear the piezo beeping because it doesn't like that. So you just have to mark your limits of how far you're supposed to go. I think what I'm gonna do, and that's why I have the set screw as long as it is I'm gonna put a screw post right here to know how far I can, or actually on this side, to know how far I can go. And so that's why I have that there. But it still works great. I mean, once you hit that, you can just turn it back off and come back on, and it works just fine again. What else? And so the reason why I don't lock, the other thing is, the reason why I don't lock the motor down is because let's say you run into something, come into shallow water while you're on the kayak, well, what'll happen is it'll just bounce up like this and bounce back, right? And if you lock it in place, I mean, it's going to hit it, and who knows what's going to happen. So I leave it like that, and I just let the momentum of the forward motion hold it in place. So let me go ahead and show you guys the head unit and what parts came with it. It was a Haswing 12 volt. I think that 1.0 stands for horsepower, but it's a 65 pound thrust trolling motor. This is the handle that came with it. Basically this was right here, and in the middle where you see this big void was a 12 volt analog LED gauge. And so I was going to use it, which is why I cut it out, but I decided to use just a normal 12 volt gauge. But that's what was there, and this is how it was. Just to show you the inside of this unit, I already took the screws off for the sake of time, but basically it comes off like this. This is the actual potentiometer, and this is what you can extend the wires. These are the wires, right? There's 3 wires. You can extend this to the cockpit of your kayak and use this as your actual speed control. It doesn't have an actual unit that you need to control with, because I think it's in the head. And the cool thing about that is that because it's in the head, you get automatic cooling because the head is always in the water when you're using it. So that's cool. But as you can see, this turns at one direction, the other, right? And that's pretty much it. I decided, so when I first took this off and wired it up, it wasn't working all the time for some reason, so I decided to go with an aftermarket potentiometer, and so far this one has been working great. It's very cheap. It's a 10k ohm potentiometer with a 1k ohm resistor on the positive and negative side. Works great. I got the idea from someone on YouTube. If I find this channel, I'll link it. But he was using it, ironically, he was using the same trolling motor, even though I had already had the idea of using this because of how light it was. I was just having trouble, and I was searching for why, and I came across his channel. But he's still using the actual one that came with it. And so what it caused me to do is buy another one, which is why you see 2 handles here. You can buy a spare one. So I bought a spare one, but I didn't end up using it. I stayed with the aftermarket one. It works just fine, no issues. And as you can see, I have a black line mark that where the off position is, so I know where the off position is. And so this is just a spare one. But Outside of that, these are the harness plugs that I use. I also got this from the guy on the channel, the other channel. And so basically these are some LED lighting plugs that you can get off Amazon. They have, this is for the 2-wire connection, the other is for the 5-wire connection, which you only use 4. And then you can also buy separate harnesses like this, which come pre-cut already, that you wire into wherever you need to wire it into. And that's what I've used for this. And outside of that, that's pretty much it. I'll link the items in my video description so you can see where I got them and what I purchased. And if you have any questions, you know, you can feel free to reach out and ask questions. But I think that's pretty much it on my setup. It's very light, it's very fast. I was using it against the current, against the wind, and I was averaging about 4 to 4.2 miles per hour. I've hit over 5 miles per hour, like 5.1 against the current in the wind with the 65 pounds. So it is very powerful and it works very well. But that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below and I will try to answer them as I can. Thanks.